Hello and welcome. We are back for another Ableton Live tutorial focusing on sound design. Let's jump in. So what we're going to do is, no, we're not going to start with the MIDI track. We're going to start with an audio track, Command T, which I believe is probably Control T on a PC. So we got this audio track. So as I mentioned, audio can be a sample. It can be something you recorded with your phone, which is a sample. It can be you plugging in your guitar or bass guitar or other instrument into an audio interface and recording the output. But for the most part, when you have an audio track, you're starting with a piece of audio that already exists. And you, instead of using one of Ableton's synthesizers, what you're actually doing is you're using Ableton's audio engine to do unique things to the audio, and then you're also using effects. And I'm going to show you some really great techniques in here, and we're going to make some pretty awesome sounds. And if you guys like ambient music, flowing, evolving sounds, and you want some really, really interesting techniques that I'm going to show here, you're going to love it. So let's jump in. We've got our audio track, which you could do Command T, or right-click, insert audio track, and I want to sample. So where are your samples in Ableton, okay? So if we're on this instrument folder, that's what we've been using. These are all MIDI instruments, so you would drop this on a MIDI track. An audio effect, you can drop on any track, it's just an audio effect. MIDI effects, you're just going to be dropping those on MIDI tracks. Max for live devices, if you have them, your own plugins, those will also be for MIDI tracks. And then you'll have some clips. These are like loops that you might have. Then you've got your sample folder, which is going to be just various one-shot samples or longer samples. But what I'm going to show you is over here in Places, you can add your own folders. So if you add a folder, you can add your own folder of your own sounds. So I have my Ken sounds. And because I added it, it's now referencing that folder on my hard drive. And these are all of my own sounds. And the folder I want to use is Found Sound. Found Sound, if you want to know more about it, Found Sound, for those who don't know, is basically you with your phone or with a recording device, some microphone, going out and recording sounds, whether you're inside your house and you're kicking your couch because it makes a good noise and you record it, or maybe you're outside and you have your recording device by a stream, or you want to hear the birds, and then taking those audio samples, that found sound, and doing all kinds of awesome stuff with it, whether you're dropping it in a sampler or, like today, we're just going to play with it in an audio track. And if you stick around to the end, I'm going to take our finished output and I'm going to show you two unique techniques that you can use to completely change it into something different. So stay to the end. So we've got these sounds, and if you go through them, if you have this little icon on right here, you'll be able to hear them. Now, you're not actually hearing my sounds because for whatever reason, when I play this back, it's not coming out of the master channel or any channel, so I don't know how to really record it. But I know I want to use a water sound because the first technique that's really cool, I think would sound really good with this. And to be honest with you, I love water sounds, so when you need water sound and you want to make really cool stuff, a synthesizer really isn't going to give you a good water sound. So let's drag this into audio, and I'm going to click play, and this is what it sounds like. Okay. Very loud. Double click on the clip to see it. This is the waveform. This is what it's playing. I'm going to lower the gain, and I'm going to move this back up to 0. Just a preference I do. So anytime you push stop, it'll stop what's playing. I want to take this sound and I want to start processing it, and I want to start layering different versions of it to make it thicker and more harmonically complex. Because what's better than one good water sound? 3 good water sounds that are manipulated so they sound similar, but they sound different. So First, let's process this sound. Right now I just have this dry sound. Let's start processing it. Let's come over to audio effects. Let's drag a reverb on it. Notice how that changes. I'm almost tempted to keep it like this because it sounds so good. But I'm going to come into here under serial. I'm going to put on parallel. Let's go serial, then parallel again. It stopped playing. Here's why. We didn't have it on loop. So if we come back in here and click play, we can't loop it until we click warp. Put it on loop, and now it's going to be looping. Now, one thing that I'm going to be doing here is the warping mode will matter, and I'm going to be doing a technique that you use in repitch mode. You can use any of these modes, and if you really want, I can do a video explaining them, but repitch allows us to do a very special technique that is really good for this. And here's what it is. See right here under BPM? Watch what happens when I change this. I'm going to time stretch this, and you're going to listen to the pitch change. Notice how it got longer? I'm going to click on this track, and I'm going to push Command D to duplicate the track. You can also right-click, duplicate. And I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to push divide by 2. Now listen to this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to change the start to something different. And I'm going to... Okay. So let's listen to our first sound. And in fact, what we're going to do is we're going to lower these down, these faders, and we're going to bring them up subtly. In fact, I'm going to lower our second one all the way down. I'm just going to rename this to higher, because we're all trying to get higher. We're going to launch this clip. I'm going to bring it up. Now let's click play on our next track. And let's slowly bring it up. One is playing at half the speed as the other. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into here. I'm going to rename it lower. And I'm going to put a high pass enact filter 8 here. And I'm going to lower, cut out some of the highs, because we're getting more highs from this track. I'm going to move this up to remove any annoying sounds. Now in the higher track, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to change the reverb on the higher sound. I'm going to click Springs. Notice that change. I'm going to play with the blend. The blend will either have it come out more of the convolution reverb side or more of the algorithm side. 50-50 will be half. Parallel means you hear both. Serial. I'm kind of liking serial. Serial means the sound gets fed into the convolution reverb first, and then that sound gets fed into the algorithmic reverb, and then that's what you hear. I'm kind of cool with how this sounds. I will go into the EQ panel and just take everything out up to 300 hertz, and I'm going to do that on the low as well. And I'm going to go into pole 4, click this, and just take out some of the highs. This is what the highs sound like. I'm going to give it a little boost. over here on the compressor. Whoops, wrong channel. Make sure you're in the right channel, folks. See how we just gave more body character? Let's play the low one again. And let's lower the volume fader of our higher one. We're gonna give this some compression too, to even out the volume. When you see the gain reduction, the compressor says anytime the volume gets above this level, knock it down by this particular ratio. So when you see that gain reduction, that means you're bringing it down. That's how much the compressor is activated. So let's bring in the highs again. Listen to this. So notice how, and try to listen on the best playback device you have. With the lower sound and the higher sound playing, it sounds completely different. But because it's two different sounds that are related, if I were to just be like, hey man, listen to this thing, and you put your headphones on, you'd be like, oh, that's a wonderful sound. You would think it was one sound, but it was really two sounds, but it gives it a very alive environment. So let's copy this process again. I'm gonna go to the lower, and I'm gonna duplicate it with Command D, and I'm gonna click play. It'll be the same as before. I'll just color it, and I'll color it lower, lower. Because this is grayed out right here, I'm gonna turn off warp, turn it back on, and I'm gonna really stretch it. Let's get it lower. Got really low here. Make sure we have loop enabled. And I'm gonna give it some bite. Let's give it some saturation. Let's go to dynamics. Excuse me, driving color. Is that a saturator on here? I'm gonna bring the saturator after the compressor. You can do before or after. I'm just gonna do this. And listen to the sound. We're gonna give it more harmonics through the saturator, and it's gonna beef it up and give it more bite. That's too much. Actually, let's move it before the compressor. Turn on soft clipping, and let's lower the compressor till we get that same amount of gain reduction. Let's play with the ratio, because I don't want it to be too compressed. Okay, I'm gonna bring the lower in. I'm gonna take these, move them down, and I'm gonna click play on our original water sound, and I'm gonna bring it up till it sounds good. If we click that, we click mute. So listen. And I'm gonna do the same thing by bringing the low all the way down, and I'm gonna bring it up a little bit, because I wanna hear more of the original sound. And now let's do the same thing with higher. What I like about this higher sound is that it sounds like it's in the foreground, whereas the low sounds like it's way in the background. And our original sound sounds like it's in the middle ground. And I'm gonna turn these all off. Because what I thought was really interesting is they said, just as an artist looks at their painting, looks at their image as foreground, background, middle ground elements, the same thing can be done in music. And that's why this sound, when we play them all together, it sounds like one unique sound. So what I want to do here is I'm going to turn these guys off for now, and I'm going to show you a very interesting trick. So what we're going to do is we're going to come into here, and I'm going to highlight all of these. And I did that by holding down Shift and selecting them. So I want them all to be selected. And I'm going to push Command G for group. And on the group, I'm going to put a reverb. Just a regular reverb. And we're going to use a reverb tail. So I'm going to actually go to Dynamics and put a limiter on this track because there's no limiter on here. And what I'm going to do is first of all, I'm going to turn the reverb off, or I'm going to turn the dry wet all the way down so you're not hearing any reverb. And I'm going to add these all back in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to group. I'm going to start bringing in the reverb. I'm going to give it more decay time. And we're going to freeze the reverb. And this frozen reverb is going to give us a very amazing piece of audio to sample. Ready? Let's click reverb, or let's click freeze now. And we're going to turn off our sounds. Hear this? That's our frozen reverb. So let's right click and insert an audio track. And I want to record the audio from group. Record enable. And I am going to click record. It's recording the output from this group. This is called resampling. I didn't do resampling because I'm already resampling, but that's so I can record this tutorial with like perfect Ableton audio. So we're going to get this sound right here, and it's only recording group, so it's not recording my voice. And I'm going to click, I'm going to go back into group here, and I'm going to turn off the freeze. So if we come into here, we've got our audio. I'm going to click stop, and I'm going to switch it to monitor in, and I'm going to turn it to no input, just so it's not recording or picking up any other input, it's just audio. So now if we push play, now here's the bonus trick. Let's add a MIDI track. Let's go into instruments. Let's throw down a simpler, because we haven't used simpler yet. And let's take our audio and drag it into the simpler. We'll record an arm, the simpler. I'll just call it simpler. By the way, simpler is a more simplified version of Ableton Sampler. I chose simpler. First of all, they both have their advantages and somewhat disadvantages. Simpler is better for this technique because it allows us to pitch shift the sample without stretching the audio. So if I play back this sample and I play a C3 and I hold it down, it'll play it. So it's allowing us to play our sample back. Now I'm going to give it some attack. So it fades in. See that? And I'm going to zoom in just to see where we are in this waveform. I'm going to bring it in a little bit. Just personal preference. And now I can play it on the keyboard. I'm going to up the volume. Filter frequency, I'm going to put it on a drive and up the drive. Listen to what it sounds like when I turn it up. I was playing a chord there. All together. Notice how it trails off. You know what we need to do, add some release. Sounds like the beach. Let's lower this frequency. Sounds good, right? Let's come into audio effects. Let's go to modulators. Let's drop an LFO. And let's click map. And let's map it to frequency. Too much. Let's lower the depth. Let's lower the rate. just a little bit. Let's come into simpler. Let's double click. These are the notes I'm playing. So we've got like harmony, chords. It's fun, right? But I want to do more sound design. I don't want to play my atmosphere sound. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to double click. I could also push B. Push B to remove the pen tool. And I am going to highlight all these and click legato. So when I click play, we got that going on. That's too short. I'm going to click duplicate a couple times. And I'm actually going to delete all of these besides the first ones, highlight them, click legato, and now let's do some more sound designing. So we're going to come into here. We're going to up the rate a little bit more because I want to hear this move up. And I'm going to come into this little box, and I'm going to click map, and I'm going to do it on the resonance. Wow, too loud. Push this to turn it down. Lower it from 100% because we don't want it to be that ridiculously high. We just want a little bit. Okay, our sound shut off, and I don't know why it did. Oh, because if we come back here in a sampler, we have to click loop. So now let's click play, and now it'll loop. Let's lower the volume. It got a lot louder. Let's click the LFO, and this is a little trick. You can duplicate it. And what I want to do is I want this to map to the rate. Not to do that, though. So turn down the offset. So now we're just introducing a little bit of variation to LFO's rate, so it's not just a perfect sine wave. I'm going to lower the rate because it's moving too much for my likings. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to minimize this LFO. I'm going to come over here to audio effects. And I'm going to go to EQs and filters. I'm going to drop in auto filter here. Make sure we can go over all the different filter types, but I don't want it all the way up. I want to cut out some of the lowers, the lower lows. And then what I'm going to do is, because I like how this sounds, I'm going to come back into my group and I'm going to bring in some of these sounds. Let's bring in the highs first. Bring in the low-low. Adjusting the faders to our likings. I'm going to come into our simpler track, and I'm going to drop a reverb on there. Hybrid reverb. Let's add this one. I'm going to come back into the simpler track. I'm going to drag a delay on here. And there you have it. That's it. Hopefully I wasn't screaming or talking too loud. And I don't have a lot of experience like recording and processing microphones because I'm normally like a synthesizer and instrument guy, so I don't have to worry about like microphone and pop filters. But now I'm gonna be getting a pop filter for this, so hopefully the audio quality of my voice isn't too bad. So I mean, this can play forever. It's wonderful. I like to make this kind of stuff You can use any kind of a sound. It doesn't have to be water. And you can just make these wonderful evolving sound textures that just play forever. So if you found this useful, please like, comment, and subscribe. If there's techniques you'd like to see me do, or you have questions, or you want to know what to do with something, like, hey, I'm an open book right now, you know, let me know what you want, and I'll probably make the tutorial. Appreciate you guys, and hope you found this useful.